University. I happen to live in the town, and I so respect everything you do. It's very much so. And Nicolette's with me. As she said, she's our social worker, and I'll talk a little bit about hospice in general. I know that's what you want to hear, but first I want to say that I have to congratulate you. I don't think there is a harder job in the world than caregiving, and sometimes nor is there a more rewarding one. And I can say that as a nurse and as a daughter of a dad who died before there was hospice here in the United States, and I took care of him with my brother who's an RN as well. So I applaud that you come and learn more, because I think that when we talk about hospice specifically, there is so very much misinformation and lack of information, and it's very underutilized. And I think that that's a shame. It's a generous Medicare benefit. But I just wanted to backtrack a little and talk about how it came to be. It's actually a relative newcomer to healthcare in the United States. The whole hospice modality, the program, the philosophy of hospice. It started this hospice movement in Britain with Dame Cicely Saunders, who actually died 5 years ago. So she was with us up until 5 years ago. Funny to hear the name Dame and something current. But she was a wonderful, wonderful woman. She was a physician, and she did a lot of work with Dr. Kubler-Ross. And I'm sure most of you are familiar with her, with the death and dying and the stages of grief and death and all those good things. But Dr. Saunders always impressed me because she really got it. And she would say things like, people need comfort and acts of kindness at end of life. We don't have to cure to heal. But boy, and that was years ago. That was early on in the 60s that she talked about these kinds of things. And still today, in 2011, I hear from physicians strange, unusual things. They just don't get it. So we expect our families to get it when the physicians and sometimes nursing staff just don't get it. You don't have to cure to heal. You have to be there, you have to be supportive, you have to be kind, and you have to manage symptoms. And that's what, when Dr. Saunders spoke at Yale University, she spoke about holistic care and how that really helps people figure all the components of their life and pull them all together as they plan to leave us, the emotional, the spiritual, the physical. And she showed pictures, I thought this was so interesting, of actual patients who were receiving good hospice care with pain and symptom management, and those who were dying without it. And she could dramatically illustrate, and that's true, pictures worth 1,000 words, she dramatically illustrated through pictures, look, this is if you do it this way, do it with compassion and with symptom management, and this is when you just kind of wing it. And I thought that was just so clever, and that was way back in 1964, before the cameras were even that great. But so Dr. Saunders did those kinds of things. She shed light on the process of dying, and I think that that's what we're trying to do as we go about our daily work, is to illuminate the dying process. And it's not so awful, and it can be beautiful. And I know a lot of us here have experiences with beautiful dying experiences, and they can be so profoundly moving, as profoundly moving as birth. And when you watch television, you see the new babies coming in, and you think, oh, is there anything more miraculous than that? But we can say that because this is what we do. Yeah, the dying process is equally beautiful. Not all the components. There are some real hard spots of that, and we know that. But for the most part, it can be a beautiful process if it's managed well, and if you have the support that you need. And that's why I'm so grateful that you came here, just to get some more information about the support that's available. I want to tell you, too, that in the early 1980s, Congress created the Medicare hospice benefit. And it's a generous, good benefit that most people don't really understand. But it's generous, it's smart, it's designed to make the process of dying a good and holistic experience. And I say it's generous because the Medicare benefit pays for supplies, equipment, staff, nurses coming into the home, chaplains, social workers, and hospice aides coming into the home to provide physical care. So it's hugely generous. And what they've determined since they did this in the 80s is that the hospice program has saved the government thousands and thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars, saving people going back to the hospital for needless tests, needless invasive procedures, when really the outcomes are going to be no different and usually worse than if they had had a gentle, soft caring in their home being wherever they live. It can be a nursing facility, assisted living. We've cared for people. I worked for a large hospice under bridges in '95. under Route 95 in cardboard boxes. We've done hospice care there, so we have seen it all. I'll tell you, from the ridiculous to the sublime. I've gone into mansions where I used to think, if I had breadcrumbs, how am I going to find my way out of here? Because the family would leave the door open, you'd go in and take it. But seriously, mansions so big that they're just beyond my comprehension. Under 95, and you know what? The experiences have been equally pleasurable because you got to do the work that was most meaningful to you. And I've done, well, I'll tell you a little bit about me and what I've done. I've been a nurse for over 33 years. It's a long time. I've worked in all facets of nursing and long-term care, done consulting across the United States, worked for Lloyd's of London doing assessments of nursing facilities for insurance premiums, things like that, just everything, worked for Joint Commission, so I've seen a lot. But I landed in hospice in the last 10 years of my career. It's a soft and gentle place to land. I thought I was segueing into retirement, and it keeps drawing me back. There's no way I'm going to retire when I would like to, because there's just so much to do, and it's exciting. As long as you feel good, why not, right? So that's what happened was I worked for a big hospice, and it was a wonderful experience. I learned more in those 5 years than I learned in my whole career. Just in ways to do things and ways not to do things, the good, the bad, the ugly. I saw a lot, learned a lot, and as I was planning to leave there, because I was all about quality, and it was a good organization, but they brought investors in who kind of let the quality go by the wayside. It became about the business, and hospice has become, it's gone from the grassroots to business, and sometimes even big business, which I find offensive, but you know, it's 2011. But anyway, I found that that was the way that the organization was going, so I left, and I thought, now what? So I thought, well, let me check out Chester County where I live. And I found that there was a need in southern Chester County for good hospice care. There really was. There was an emptiness down there, a void, as I spoke with healthcare entities down there. They told me this, and also the movement of people from Delaware County out to Chester County just said, you know, this might be a way to go. So 5 years ago in July, we opened Willow Hospice, and it's been very, 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 very pleasurable, successful, and when I define success, in that we've reached a lot of families and made a lot of difference. I have books like this filled with letters of thank you, and that's as powerful to me as anything that I've ever done. And then also another sort of a hobby of mine is to work with our staff and to help them grow into whatever they want to be, you know, and to help them just move forward. And because we receive a lot of donations, and because people are good to us, we're able to support further growth in education, and I know that fits into what you're doing. But some of our hospice aides are going to nursing school, and that's where they should be. They're talented, wonderful women. All our staff goes to education every year to just further their knowledge of death and dying and grieving and bereavement. Bereavement is something that we take hugely seriously, and Nicolette will speak to that. But I used to think anecdotally that bereavement, when someone dies and we follow along with them, that was, you know, something we had to do for hospice. But when I saw the impact that we could make by doing it early and hitting it hard and heavy, when we take somebody on and start the work right then, the people after their loved one left, they were able to just kind of pick right up and move on with their lives. And I used to think anecdotally, yeah, well, that makes sense. But then the Hospice, National Hospice and Palliative Care Organization, we live by their standards, were able to do studies that really supported that early bereavement work helps people to just march right forward. And actually, it showed statistical differences in levels of depression when someone has early bereavement support and when they're followed through the whole process. So that's something we do, and I just think that they're the gifts that we can give the community that really float my boat and make my day. I always say we'll never get rich doing this, and that's certainly not a goal of any of ours, but we sure are happy. We come to work and enjoy it, and I can speak for all our staff, that any of them sitting here would tell you that. So that's a little bit about where we came from, but the philosophy that we want to speak about is that hospice care is comfort only. We don't cure, we manage symptoms. We keep people where they want to be. And our experience is we say to people who have a bit of time left, what is it you want in your last final weeks and hours and days? And sometimes months, and sometimes years. Sometimes we've had people on for a year and a half, 2 years. And this is illustrative of just the bigger picture. I had a gentleman say to me, you know what, Chris, I want to stop going to the University of Pennsylvania and having them poke and prod and push at me. Really bright man. And he said, I want to sit here with my dog, I want to drink another cup of coffee, read the paper, look out at the pond. He lived near a pond. And he said, that's what I want, and I want to do it without hurting. And I said, yeah, we can help you with that. And what an experience that was for him, for his family. He died comfortably at home with a dog in his bed. This is what we do every day. And this is what hospice is. It's taking the medicine out of it. Because when people don't elect hospice, and I find this fascinating, we see it because we reside in Jenner's Pond. That's where our offices are, and we have the elderly population. The families who opt not for hospice, and I'm pleased to say that's fewer and fewer families. I watch their loved ones, because I sit right by the window, go out in the ambulance, round and round, over to the hospital. They're there for 8 miserable hours, and back they come. Not that that's not sometimes appropriate, but why I see them go out, and we have hospice nurses that also work in the ER there, and they came to us through the ER saying, what you're doing is great, you're keeping these poor people out of the ER. They're going over, they're getting some IV fluid, coming back. The underlying causes aren't resolving because there's no fixing a lot of this. When you're old, sometimes that's just what happens. You're declining, you're like a little clock winding down, and it's a natural process. It's not anything that we need to bring in the IVs and the fluids. It's natural, and if people are allowed to die in place with the supportive care around them, well, you know what, we can't ask for anything more than that. And when I see these poor people come back, what I see is they're frightened, they're disoriented, they're scared, they're cold because it's freezing over there all the time. And I've gone over with our patients. Sometimes our patients will break an arm or something will fall. And I go over to, all our staff goes over to support them. But what I see is them laying on a hard litter in a cold hallway, scared to death, holding on to the little railings. I think this is just heartbreaking. Now, if they have to have their arms set, they need pain management right then before we take them back. That's reasonable. But for the reasons that they go over there, sometimes just for the fluid or just because people get scared and send them back, I think there's a better way. And Dame Cicely was way ahead of her time. We didn't invent this. She did. This calm, supportive care. And then what I can say, boy, I was stray from this altogether, but what I can say to you is that the family support is 95% of what we do because we take anxiety from a 12 on a scale of 1 to 10 and bring it down to a 2, just through education. This is what to expect. If you're going to care for your loved one at home, here's what needs to happen. Here's what we can do to support that, and here's what we need to bring in extra troops and resources. It's the knowledge is power. And boy, I'm saying that to the greatest group because this is what you live. Knowledge is power. And you know it. And as soon as people understand what they're facing and what's going to happen, then they know. And again, knowing helps them relax, and then we're able to act as coaches. And I think that's what we do best. We come in and we say, you know what, we'll get through it together. We've held hands and we've marched through this process together. And I think, if I can say it in a nutshell, that's what hospice does. But it's a philosophy. No aggressive care, symptom management. Of course, if somebody cuts their eye, we take them, get stitches. That's not what I mean, but somebody with end-of-life heart disease and they're having trouble breathing, we come in and we manage the symptoms. We don't operate independently, we work under a physician. And I want to say that we have a team concept. We have a medical director, a wonderful woman named Dr. Elizabeth Carroll, but every hospice has a medical director, right? They guide our care, and we meet every 2 weeks and talk about every single patient and every family. How are they doing? What are the issues, and what do we need to do to resolve them? It's a very focused meeting. It's not all jibber-jabber with stories. It's about what are the issues, how can we help? And our medical director guides the process. Social worker speaks as to what she's finding, the nurses, the chaplains, we all speak about, and the volunteer coordinator, that's a very important piece. We all talk together because it's very much a team concept. There's no I in this team, and it's all about what we can do to support. And all hospices work this way. We're not special. Our regulations say that we meet every 2 weeks to really manage what's going on in the homes, be it nursing home, assisted living, under the bridge, or in the residential home. And I just read a statistic this morning before I came here. Of the people on hospice, of the patients on hospice, 40% are in their own home when they die. And that is increasing every single year. When I first started, it was, oh boy, much less, 19%. So we're making a dent with education. It's just so slow. Makes me crazy. If we had money, I'd like to go on TV and say, listen, this is a benefit. It's generous and it's good. It's very, very good. Volunteer is an important part of the hospice process. We are the only Medicare program that's mandated to have volunteers. Is that an oxymoron or what? We're mandated to have volunteers. If we don't have them, we cannot take patients on and perform the work that we do. We were told that flat out, right? It's in the regulations. What we have to do is calculate the hands-on hours of our staff, social workers, nurses, and hospice aides. We take those hours, aggregate them, and then we have to have 5% of those hours supplemented by volunteers. Our volunteers do administrative tasks. They make packets of information to send out, admission packets, they answer phones, they do everything. They sit with patient and families so that the patient's family can go out, get their hair cut, go out to dinner. We very much support the caregivers going, getting away, taking a break. You don't realize when you're in it, it's an issue probably that you're in a funnel and it's like centrifugal force, you're spinning around in that, and unless you can break free and kind of look at it with a different perspective, you're kind of sucked into it and it can overwhelm you and take you over. And it's so important. The breaks are so hugely important, and we support that by putting our volunteers in and saying, go out. I don't care if you walk around the block, go to Giant, go shop. There's new foods coming out all the time. It's fun in there. And they do. And the men are so afraid to leave their wives. We see this all the time. And we'll leave them. They're so fearful of that. But once they do it, and they go out, now they golf, they go out and go to Giant, bring some good foods in, they just go to a movie, they really enjoy themselves. The women, caregivers, we find, don't have such trouble bringing away and going. The men struggle with that. Just for what it's worth, that's anecdotal. I don't have any statistics, that's what I see. Nicolette may differ, but that's what I see. But we have chaplains that go in, social workers. This is all hospices are mandated to do this. This is what we do. We all follow the same federal regulations. We may interpret them differently or run our programs differently. We definitely run ours differently than our other programs. That's because we're RN owned and we really get it. Not saying that the others don't, but we really get where people are because we've lived it and have been there as nurses and clinicians. So we have the RNs, the chaplains, the home health aides, the social workers, volunteers, the medical director. The home health aides, the hospice aides are critical. We handpick ours. They have to be a very special person to do home health because you're operating independently in people's homes. So they have to be considerate, have discretion. They have to really be smart because you can't just pluck anybody and put them in that position. It's too very much very important, and it's too important to leave to chance. So we're very careful. We screen again. You have to be very careful. That's your first line of defense. And if you have good people at that level, they report back to the case manager, the registered nurse, who typically visits every twice a week or more often as needed. But the hospice aides report back to them every little thing, and they take it so seriously. Every new skin, picking of the skin, or they didn't eat as much today, they're just not themselves. They have a handle on it because they see this patient every single day. We typically have home health aides out from Monday to Friday for about an hour, 2 hours a day. As the person, particularly if the person's in their home, and the residents, we find the caregivers need more support. We'll have somebody in home 7 days if we need to. But what I need to tell you, honey, is that it's case by case. Every single case is discussed. Nothing's cookie cutter. It's not 2 days, 3 days. A lot of hospices will do 2, 3 days a week hospice aides. We feel that Monday through Friday is the least we can do. Saturday and Sunday if people really need it. So again, that's discussed a team. It's a joint decision. It's not made arbitrarily by the hospice nurse. It's made by everyone. And I think that because we have a good consensus and a good team, that we're able to make really good decisions because they're not arbitrary, they're thoughtful. And I think that that's why we have a good success rate. And by success, again, it's the family not stressed, the patient comfortable, that their wishes at end of life are honored, and everybody at end of life has different wishes. Some people want to see family members that they haven't seen in a while. It's really hard and really sad. We see so many disenfranchised families, and I'm sure you see it too. I see it in my own family. It happens everywhere. Socioeconomically means nothing. Every single level of family has some level of dysfunction. I really believe that. It's very rare that I don't see. Isn't that true? And And we see a dysfunction at every level, and that's very hard. And a lot of times we're able to bridge some of that, not all, not miracle workers, but at least for the one who's dying, able to see some resolution of some issues, some coming together. We have, this is a neat, I want to tell you a story, but our volunteer coordinator does Healing Touch, and she was able to take a family of 7 siblings who did not, 2 spoke and the rest didn't. It was a very hard family, and the mother was dying, and the siblings all wanted to be there. They all loved their mother, but they didn't like each other. And she was able to come in and have them hold hands and pull together to do some Healing Touch. And, you know, I'm not all so sure about Healing Touch. There's so much wonderful benefit from it. I have trouble. I'm a real nuts and bolts kind of girl with a clinician's mind and a scientific bit, and to see this Healing Touch in action is just a phenomenon that I struggle with, but I watch it, and the results are out of this world, truly. So she brought this group together. They held hands. They supported their mom. When she left this family in peace to do the work that they needed to do among themselves, they were hugging, they were talking, they were supporting their mom, and they all left with tears and with guarantees that they would come back together in some form or another. And that was so powerful, so powerful. So that's what our volunteers do. They do various forms of therapy. We have pet therapy. It's hugely, wildly popular. We have 8 teams of dogs, and dogs are our best pet therapists. They come in with their person at the other end, and they do some real good work. And I know you've all heard these stories. People who haven't spoken in a while speak when they see the dog. The dog gets up on the bed, lays in the bed with them, and it's very nice. And we've had great success with our pet therapy. Aromatherapy, we just started doing that with oils. And oils that are supposed to, and there's so much talk about oils, but supposed to diminish secretions. There are a lot of secretions at the end of life for a whole lot of reasons. The lungs and the heart just aren't working as effectively. Heart's just a simple pump, and if it's not pumping fluids back up, so we naturally have secretions. But we have oils that sort of, we have medications too, but the oils are nice because they smell nice and they kind of tamp that down a little bit. People can relax. And there's nothing worse than hearing those secretions if you're the family member, but we're able to pretty much get a good grip on that most of the time. Sometimes it's daunting, but we have a lot of resources at our disposal to help with that. The oils are another part of it. Trying to think what other therapies, alternative therapies. Light massage, that's very nice. We do a lot of light massage. People love that.
And our music.
Music
therapy for now.
That's huge. And that's very specific to the patients. What do you like? And we get it. If we have an opportunity to get in early enough, we're able to discern what kind of music would you like to hear? And it's not always what you think. We have a lot of bluegrass, and a lot of Irish music, a lot of rock. It's not always the church music hymns, but people do like that as well. So we have an extensive music library, extensive music from the 40s, 50s. Big band. Yeah. People wonder sometimes how we're reimbursed and how we do this work. I did say it's a Medicare program, and it is. It's generous in that it's the only Medicare entity today, it's the only healthcare entity that's reimbursed on a per diem model. Now, going forward, and it's fascinating with all the changes in healthcare, we see changes coming in. Probably the reimbursement will be structured in a way that we're receiving reimbursement heavy on the front end because that's where our resources are rooted. We bring in beds, equipment, oxygen, medication, staff. And in the middle, there's a kind of a calm period, and that will be reimbursed at a lesser rate. And then at the end, again, the reimbursement will be ratcheted up. But I think in general, there'll be a big carve-out, and the reimbursement will be decreased markedly. It's not excessive, but it's enough to get our job done. We can do a really good job with the reimbursement that they give us. And right now, it's on a per diem basis. Every hospice can choose to do use their pot of money as they see fit. We like to use ours in hands-on resources. The more staff we can put on this, the better, because I think that's what people need. And we also provide briefs and incontinent products that a lot of hospices do. But I think if we handle those issues, we negate skincare issues as much as possible, because if you're dealing with good skincare, then you don't have those issues. So to me, it's a no-brainer, but that again is a clinician. Where do you put your resources? That's how we like to do that. So We put a lot of our resources into our home health aides. We got them all GPS system so that they can drive around. They're not calling into the office. They get where they're supposed to be at the right time. So, I mean, we do those kinds of proactive things that just make the whole process easier for everybody. I think the worst thing is for a family member to be waiting for the home health aide to show up, and it's 20 after 11. It's 11:30. They were due at 11. And they start to worry. They worry about the home health aide, and they worry about how much time will she have with my loved one. And so we negate all that by making sure they have what they need to get where they need to be. So just their little things, how we run the program. We differ from home health in so many ways. Many of you may have had experience with home health. Home health, I feel so sorry for them. They're trying with such a limited pot of money to do a good job. And they're micromanaged. That's all I can say. They're micromanaged. They're able to give only a skilled nursing visit with these parameters. We have much more generous parameters when we can see people. And we're able to still think and act as clinicians because our assessments are what our assessments are. We determine what we need to assess. They're micromanaged. They have an assessment tool that's this thick, which in the government's wisdom, they were trying to make it better and to give everybody what they needed to ration the services because, again, they're finite. They don't go on. But the whole idea for them is to that they have to work everything into tiny little pieces of care, and they struggle, and I feel badly for them. So home health care is a very different animal than what we do. We have an eligibility period. Typically, the physician needs to certify, and it's the medical director and the patient's attending physician, that they have a lifespan of 6 months or less, given their prognosis, given what's been said, given their diagnosis. Now, do they fall into that? Rarely. Oftentimes, they die very quickly within a week because the physicians are often slow to refer within a month or 2 months or 6 months. But a lot of times, they go beyond that. That's okay, as long as we look at them and we recertify them 90 days, and then every 60 days thereafter. 90, 90, 60, 60, 60, forever. The benefit never runs out. When someone, and this happens all the time, patients get so much better, they live longer on hospice. When they get to a point where they're not hospice eligible, we take them off. And they flourish, they do really well. We say they graduated. And then we keep contact with the family, and when they start to need us again, and inevitably they do, then we come back in. So it's a generous, unlimited benefit. It goes on forever throughout the patient's lifetime. As long as they're eligible, they get the benefit, which I think is a wonderful thing. When in 1980, when this first started, the benefits were finite. When you used up 4 months, that's it. You never got hospice again, and that was awful. Because, again, people do get better on hospice care because a little extra time and attention, people perk up sometimes. And then they were done, and that was such a shame, so people hesitated to use it. I don't want to waste it. That's not the case anymore. It's very generous. They're non-cancer diagnoses, these big misconceptions. Cancer, that's it. No. End-stage Parkinson's, ALS, general debility. People are they have a whole host of a lot of little things. They're not eating, they're not walking as well, they're incontinent, they have a little difficulty swallowing. You can look at them and say, eek, they just don't look like they did 3 months ago. Just a generalized debility or a failure to thrive. They're losing weight for no particular reason. So they're just not eating, they're losing interest. And that's what happens. People shut out the world. They kind of withdraw, they go into their own world and start to shut down. Dying is hard work. It's a process. It's a process. And I think if people understand that, you can start to look and say, I'm seeing this, and bring some help into their home. Because the help is out there, truly. It's a cliche, but dying with dignity is the goal. That's what you want. Dying with dignity. We all deserve that. Because there's so many opportunities for an undignified death, and I have watched very ugly deaths, and I'm sure you have seen them or heard about them. And that's a shame. I think as human beings, we've lived rich, full lives. We deserve much more than that. And so if you have the support you need, that's what hospice is there to do. Hospice nurses have expertise in pain and symptom management, so patients can be as pain-free and symptom-free as possible. It's an art and a science. It's a lot of trial and error sometimes, but we're able to do that. And the social work, I'm going to let you talk about that.
About the dignity? Well, I mean,
yeah.
I think the main, aspect of dying with dignity is, how do you want to die, and where do you want to die, and we just had a situation recently where, a gentleman had been declining over a few months. He did the whole, went to the hospital, went to a nursing home, got his rehab, then went back to the hospital, went back to the nursing home. And this all started just from his home. It started with one hospitalization. And here we are 9-10 months later, and he still hasn't been able to get home because it is a slippery slope that just starts to spiral downwards. And one night, the nursing, he started having condition change again. And the nursing homes, their hands are tied. If someone is not signed on to hospice, which you can be on hospice in a nursing home, you can be on hospice in assisted living, any of these type of settings. But if you're in a nursing home and you're not on hospice and you start to have a condition change, their hands are tied, They don't have that backup where the family has already decided we're keeping them in place. So unfortunately, they do have to call them out. They're kind of stuck in their own. So I understand where they are. So it was a night that it was all kind of spiraling down again. They sent him to the emergency room, and one of our kind of on-call nurses works in the local emergency room, and she just finally stopped. And this all it takes usually is one person, one practitioner, be it a doctor, be it a nurse, be it a social, someone, to finally just take a step back and say to a family or a loved one, we can stop this right now. And usually the family just wants somebody to say that. Thank you. I just want somebody to say that. And it was really probably, it was late at night, but, she went up to them and said, why doesn't he just go home? And the family said, that's what he wants. He wrote in his will that he wants to die at home. And she goes, let's not send him back. Let's send him home. We'll call hospice and he'll go home. And the family says, we can do that? She goes, yeah, we can do that. She called the nursing home and said, he's not coming back. Doctor wrote a discharge order for hospice to follow at home. He went home. 4 days later, he died at home. And the family was like, thank you. And they actually knew about hospice. They had other family members die on hospice. They just needed that one practitioner to step up and say, let's just stop this. So there are lots of doctors, there are lots of nurses, there are a lot of social workers that don't feel it's their place to be that one person to say it. But truly, if you're in this field and you've kind of signed on to be part of this field and be part of people's lives, it's all of our responsibility that when we see something spiraling in a certain direction, for us to step up and say to the loved one or family, where do you want to go with this? And you can stop at any moment that you want to. And people are really kind of relieved to hear that a lot of times. They say, thank you. That's what I was thinking in the back of my head, because sometimes you have tried everything. You've done everything as a mother, as a daughter, as a niece. You've done it. You've done what you had to do for this person, and now you're giving them the last gift that you need to give them, and that is the dignity to die the way that they want to die. And people have all different ideas of that. I mean, it's not a cookie-cutter thing either. Not everyone wants to die at home. Not everyone wants to die in hospice. Some people have true, for whatever reason, beliefs on how you're supposed to die. So you do have to take that moment to really talk to the family, talk to the patient, and hear what they want. Because it's not cookie cutter. And you can't go in with your own idea that you think everyone should die on hospice and everyone should die pain-free. Some people have these beliefs that you're supposed to have a little pain. Some people believe that you're only supposed to die in a hospital. And you can do some education and clear up some myths. And sometimes just with one conversation, you kind of change their mind. But really, they wanted to change their mind. They just wanted one person to take the time and sit down and talk to them. I do have the mindset that I do think everyone should die on hospice. I think it is almost a sin when anyone dies without hospice care because I just truly believe in the benefits so much. I believe in the caring that we give. I believe in symptom management. I believe in being able to die without excruciating pain. It doesn't mean that we're always going to have someone completely comfortable, but these resources are there. And there is a whole philosophy and a whole bunch of really, really smart people behind the hospice philosophy. It's not just a bunch of nurses and little social workers out there. There are some very smart people in this country that believe in end-of-life care. And I really do think that in the next 20, 30 years, hopefully we're all going to have a different concept of what dying is. And like Chris had said, how beautiful dying can be. And it's hard. It is hard. I mean, I've seen teenagers die. I've seen babies die. I've seen people in their 20s die. I've seen people who have lost multiple children and now are losing their husband. So like there is all just this sadness behind it, but we're still just people living through it. So if you continuously look at the sadness and just the enormity of it, it really will just be this never-ending thing. But if you take the moment to look at each little aspect of the story, you really see the beauty in it too. So I just think that's the main thing too, taking the time to have that one conversation about how you want to die, where you want to be, can really change your whole, mindset of dying and your idea of what hospice is. Because people have a lot of misconceptions about what it is. But truly what it is what are your wishes? So that'd be the only thing I think that's great.
Can you talk a little bit about the bereavement counseling?
Yeah. Well, our hospice particularly, but I know I've worked for other hospices as well, so it's pretty general across the board, offer about 12 months to 13 months of follow-up bereavement support. That encompasses phone calls, mailings, support groups, but really our bereavement assessment begins on day one. I kind of have a lovely dual role, so I get to be people's social workers and then I get to be their bereavement counselors too, which in larger hospices it's not always like that. You're kind of bounced to different people, which it should be a smooth transition. But on the first day of admission, you should be assessing the daughter, the spouse, the grandchild, whoever is there, whoever's involved. And then also asking the family who's not here today that might be having the difficulty or might need some extra support. So it's definitely more than day one, but on day one you start that process of looking at the bereavement side. There is a term called anticipatory grief, and that's actually started maybe years before the death happens. And you can see that a lot with the memory loss, type of group, because you're slowly saying goodbyes. Mm-hmm. You're saying goodbyes to lots of little things. You might say, I lost my mom years ago. But don't be alarmed at that time that you physically lose her. It can be just as overwhelming. You might think, why am I crying so much? Why am I so overwhelmed at this death? I lost her 5 years ago to dementia. Why am I so upset? Because truly, when we love someone, we will take them in any shape, size, just that they're there. My mom's still here. She's physically here. There's something to the aspect of physically having someone. I've had, people that are MS and they're completely, staring and they're nonverbal, but they have a 5-year-old. And that 5-year-old is so connected to their mother. They've never had a mother that could hug them. They've never had a mother who could talk to them, but that's still their mother. The physicalness of having someone that you love is the main thing. So even though you lost your loved one socially and communication years ago, when you physically lose them, don't be alarmed if you're just as overwhelmed with the grief as anybody else. And that's something too. People might say, my mom's 90, my mom's 100. I had all these years with her. They almost have like guilt when they have grief after their passing. But it's still your mom, I do believe that the grief can be this, being a 10-year-old, being a 20-year-old, being a 60-year-old and losing your mom or dad. The grief can almost be the same. Now, it could take your life in a different direction. Losing your dad at 5 or losing your dad at 20 can affect your life differently. But the grief that you feel, even if you're 60 or 50 and you lose your dad, it can be very much the same. Because at that point, too, you can have a lot of more memories and a lot of more things that you have to work out now that you've lost your parent or someone, because now you have that whole adult relationship, too, So don't ever have that feeling of like, oh, I got so many good years with them. Why am I, so upset? I'm lucky, but you still lost your parent. So, people try to use those coping mechanisms in their head, but you really don't have to. You're allowed to be really upset when you lose your parent or lose, your sibling or anything like that. So,
questions? Yeah, I just have a question. my mom's in an assisted living facility, and if you want to kind of, I'm very tentative about the planning process of this. I mean, I don't want to sound like, okay, so mom, next, in the last 6 months of your life, or, I have 4 siblings I have to work this stuff out with, I'm the youngest, and it's awkward. I mean, what do you want to have in place with the facility, in terms of, transition to hospice when necessary,
in a facility, I mean, the facility is going to remain their primary caregiver.
Right.
When your loved one's in a facility and you come onto hospice, hospice will be kind of the supplement service. Okay. So it's not going to change the plan of care too much with the facility. They're still going to have to provide the same care that you guys kind of signed on with your contract and everything. Now, hospice will come in with another set of eyes and ears, especially our nurses who are also certified in palliative and hospice care, which we have this whole other special not only are they RNs, they're also certified in this whole other certification. So we will work with facilities on the plan of care. So we're not going to come in and change really much at first, unless that person is like in agony pain. We're going to walk in and be like, okay, we're going to do some orders today, So, but when they're in a facility, the facility is still the primary, caretaker.
I think you're wondering too, when's the right time and how would you know? Is that what you're thinking?
A little bit. I mean, this is new to me, so
yeah, sure.
And also, just is there something that you want to have in place? Like, I mean, I have good communication with the head nurse, but is there any legal stuff that you have to set up?
No, but some people do. Well, you know what? You're going to know when it's the time for hospice because you can reach out and ask, and there's nurses will always come out and evaluate. But and that's a great question. We just wrote an article for Hershey Mills Digest that talks about pre-planning hospice, like you pre-plan funerals, because there's so much difference among them that you have an opportunity now to research them, interview them, talk to them, see what kind of services they provide, and when it's the right time, then you can have on your mom's chart when it is time for hospice. This is the hospice I choose with the phone number. But how will you know? I guess the best way to say that is when you start to see a decline, when you start to see the things we talked about, just a slowing down, a disease process that really isn't going to get better, loss of weight, loss of interest in things.
Loss of appetite.
Lack of appetite, sure. And nurses will come in anytime and just evaluate. And a lot of times we'll go in and the family will request it. Not a lot of times. Sometimes families are smart, they know. But we'll go in and we'll look and say, you know what, it isn't time right now. We'll keep an eye on it. When it is time, we'll keep checking and we'll let you know. So, but a good way to do that, because what happens is, we talk honestly, it was Joyce said, we talk honestly here, and I'm going to talk honestly. A lot of hospices, again, it's big business. They can be ruthless and they can come in and just kind of take over it. We don't use a marketer. Most hospices do. I find it unseemly. I think we can do a real good job with that. I like to use the resources in the field. So we don't use a marketer. So maybe we're not as well known. So this is your opportunity to check out all the hospices. Read up about them. Check their websites. Talk to somebody in their organization. And I have a whole list of questions you can ask. How often will the home health aide come? How often does the RN visit? How involved can I be in mom's plan of care? All those good questions, and I can always send you more questions. I can take your email, you can email me, but I have questions to ask so that you can make a good choice. And once you've made that choice, pre-plan it like anything else. Just have it on mom's chart. Ask the nurse to put it in. I would choose it when my mom needs it. And so they'll know that that's your wish, if you're the power of attorney.
People are becoming so more educated on hospice. I'm finding a lot more situations where it's the family mentioning hospice to the doctor and not the other way around. So you have the right to mention hospice to your physician or your loved one's physician and say, are we at the point yet where we can get evaluation or get hospice on board? And hospice can do just evaluations too. They can just come out and evaluate your loved one and see if they're at a point where they're ready. But I'm finding it more and more that as a culture we're becoming more educated on it, it's the loved ones mentioning it to the doctor and not the other way around. And that's how a lot of people come onto hospice a lot earlier in their disease progress, which is a goal of hospice as well, is for people to come on as early as possible in their disease process so that they can have the full benefit. We're fine being there in the last 4 days or the last 2 weeks, but we really would love to have been there 4 months earlier, so that we could have really helped the family, helped the household, and been, more involved in the care.
And Nicolette had a very good point that physicians are reluctant oftentimes, and you're going to see that. You say, and we see this all the time, the family said, I asked my physician, he said, oh, they're not ready yet. And the interesting part, we had this happen in a facility around here not too long ago, right before Christmas, and the family wanted it so badly, the facility pushed and the physician said, they're not ready. Well, that person died on Christmas Day. 4 days later, on Christmas Day with no support, and the facility reached out and said, we know that they're not on, but could you come anyway? Of course we did. But, I mean, that's the kind of mentality that we struggle with. It's so frustrating, I can't tell you. I really thought that in the 5 years we were really hammering this home into our community that we would have made more of an inroad. Physicians, for heaven's sakes. But I still see that there's tons of work to do. And Nicolette is so right. The families are so much more together and more on board with what their loved one needs than the physicians and a lot of times nurses at the facility are. So reach out, ask. People can go out. Any hospice can go out and do an evaluation. Say, not quite time yet. We'll get back to you, or we'll come back when they need us. But it's there for you. And the other thing is, if a person comes on for a trial, and so, we're not quite sure if they're ready or not, but let's be conservative and give them that opportunity. We can say,
Just discharge them.
Discharge them, we'll take them back on when they need us more.
You never lose your benefits. So.
Right.
And also, if you sign with the hospice and 3 months in you're not happy, there is a transfer process as well, that you can transfer hospices very smoothly without any interruption in your benefit as well. So don't think once you sign on with one hospice, it's set in stone. If you just don't get a good feeling and the visits haven't been going the way they're supposed to be going, you say, I'd like to transfer. So.
Yeah, and people don't have to be bedbound for hospice. We have people that go out and drive, go do their own food shopping, but they're dying. But they go out, and we have a patient who's going Saturday down to Maryland for a visit. So our patients are up and about too, a lot of them. They still go out and do some yard work. So it isn't just for the last 10 minutes and that's what people think, the last few hours. Did we help to clear up any misconceptions today?
Yeah.
Question. Oh, do you have to wait? You don't have to get an approval from the doctor, right? We could call you, right?
Anyone can refer. Anybody. And people do. Sometimes our housekeepers, with the work where we work, come in and say, boy, did you look at so-and-so? She doesn't look so good. And then we'll go in and yeah. Before we can physically touch the person and do a physical assessment, we get an order from the physician. But to come in and do education and evaluate, we don't need a physician's order for that.
Review.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then usually once we call the physician, they said, oh, yeah, I guess we could do, Usually it's like, oh, I didn't think of that.
Yeah, they're busy. They're busy.
They're busy. They just didn't think of that, It's just what we see a lot with the physicians. We're kind of, the whole dying process and the death part is like an afterthought to them. And that's, they go to medical school to cure and to cure.
And they say that too. We don't want to give up. I don't think give up. This is a natural progression. But they say that in 2011, we don't want to give up. I thought I heard the end of that years ago. But they say that. So, and that's what we're up against. So anyone can refer. It's a generous, wonderful benefit. So, and I think someday they'll get it too.
Are you only in Chester County?
No, we go into Delaware County and we go into Lancaster. The eastern part of Lancaster, the western part of Delaware County. So
we take any referral basically, and then if it really is out of our area, because we don't really want to send our nurses to, and if it's on call, we don't want to put you in a situation where you're waiting 2 hours for an on-call nurse.
Okay.
We would refer you to someone that knows, a good company. So we take any referral, and we figure it out on our end.
Okay.
we never leave you without resources. We'll help always. And we do, and then charity care too. All hospices do charity care as well. So it's a great benefit under Medicare. Most insurances have a hospice benefit, but if they don't, we just encounter that. Then we take anybody. That's just what hospice does. Okay, I'm sorry.
Earlier you gave the example of how you encourage the caregiver to go out and take some time for themselves.
Yes.
Can you speak to how you specifically deal with that when there are major issues of guilt?
Oh,
you know,
yeah.
Again,
so
needing to be
Guilt?
there. Can you imagine that?
That's what we deal with 95% of the time when we work with families. We deal deal with guilt. And
So what are some specific strategies you've used that perhaps we can use,
To
or we can say to ourselves when we're dealing with it? How do we
Well,
address it?
one of them is to ask for help and to say, can we get somebody in there that you can really trust? It's like leaving your child. That's the same mentality. Who can I leave my child with and trust so I can go out and get a hamburger and come back? So we strongly encourage, we say, here, this volunteer has this much education. She's a smart lady or a smart man. We have tons of good volunteers. So you get somebody good that can stay there and you say, you know what, you really need to do this. Just go out for a couple hours. Nothing will happen, and if it does happen, we'll be in touch. We have your cell phone, we'll text you. Give them all the supports they need. Give them a leash so that they're still connected. And they feel that even if I go out, we are in touch. We will communicate with you instantly with the most minor change. And typically that helps.
I think also too sometimes when it comes down to the final hours, and sometimes people think the final hours are just going to be hours and they end up being days. And we come in and the daughter is still sitting there or the husband is still sitting there. And I do some education with the idea of it happens the way it's supposed to happen. And you're going to have to kind of bring that into your heart a little bit. If you step out of the room and she passes away, it means that's the way it was supposed to be. It means she couldn't do it if you were sitting here. And so if you don't allow her to have that break, if you don't allow yourself to have that break, it might not happen that she can let go. Or she will wait until you come back, because I've seen that too. I've seen people wait to take that last breath until someone stepped in the room. I truly believe it happens the way it's supposed to happen. If you're not there, it means you're not supposed to be there. So you have to go home and sleep. You have to go out and eat. And this process has to be its own process. You can't designate if you're going to be there at the last breath. Dying doesn't work that way. And some people really do not want someone there with them when it happens. I've seen that. They just are better when everyone's out of the room. I've seen stories of people sitting there for days, and the one moment they step out to get a cup of coffee, the person passes away. And I say, they were waiting for you to go get that cup of coffee. They wanted you to step out for one moment so they could do what they had to do, you know? And then I've seen the exact opposite. I've seen, them hold on until that son flew in from Dallas to step into the room, and they took their last breath. So,
but it's true. I had a 25-year-old fellow who was dying, and his wife wanted to be there, couldn't. Her guilt was beyond all proportion. It was so sad to watch. And he said to her, I'll never forget, and he still was able to articulate, he said to her, I need you to go down to 7-Eleven and get me an orange, special kind of orange soda. And she said, we have ginger ale. Why would you want? And he said, I really want you to do this. And it makes me sad. But she went out and got that soda, and the hospice nurse was there. I know he arranged this. The hospice nurse was there, and and let go. And she came back and was horrified that she had missed this. And it took a lot of work to say, he orchestrated that. That was his choice.
My father passed in 2008. One of the things we learned from that is it's okay to train yourself early on to say goodbye to your parents at whatever stage they're at. You don't have to feel guilty that you might think they're going to die sooner than they should, because they're going to die when they're going to die. Enjoy each stage that you have, but the sooner we learn that as soon as you start to let go of the person and give them permission to leave when they're ready.
I wish a lot more people could have it.
My father didn't die until the last grandchild got into the room, and then he left. And we just told everybody, just wave goodbye. I mean, you can sing the Phillies fight song. I don't care what you do, but this is it. Enjoy it and let go.
That's right. Yeah. That's right.
Our hospice people told us when my dad was dying, we have my handicapped brother who lives with us, and they said to us, who took care of Tim his whole life? They said, my dad. And they said, your mother needs to tell your dad it's okay, that Tim will be taken care of. And so we went through that whole process. I went to my mom and I said, this is what you need to do. I know it's going to be hard, but this is what you need to do. And she did it. And shortly thereafter, he felt like he could go, because he felt comfortable knowing that everybody was going to be okay.
Some people, I mean, that's a true thing. People need to hear, even as they're dying, they sometimes need to hear certain things. So where you feel that, oh, I don't need to say goodbye. He's, gone. He's almost gone. No, everyone should be able to verbalize it and give that kiss and say goodbye and reassure them that everyone's going to be okay. Everyone's taken care of. I've always said, when you're a mother or you're a father, you are kind of to the end, the mother or father. So, you probably could be laying there still worried about, oh my goodness, and if you can just take a moment to say, Mom, we're going to be okay. We're going to be fine. Sometimes that helps just let go a little bit and they're able to leave.
But I think it's very debilitating if someone can't allow themselves that opportunity to move out and to do something different. Your perspective changes when you take a break and you move away. You're able to see things more clearly and maybe more fully. So I think that's one way to encourage people to do that. Is your perspective changes. You get tunnel vision. If that's all you see, it's just too hard for the person who's doing the caregiving. And sometimes, I think, for the person who's on the end of the receiving the care. It's too intense. You need a break. I have a little puppy that I'm always hovering over. And I think sometimes that little puppy is so glad when I'm away, just to get a break. I think people need a break. I really do, just from each other. So I think that's a big piece of it. Is that cool?
Yeah.
The other thing is a caregiver can only be as good as they are to themselves. So when my husband and I went to a dementia conference a month or so ago because we need all the help we can get. And that was one thing they said. They said, as caregivers, you need to break free once in a while and take care of yourselves, because if you work at this and work at this and work at this, you run out of gas and you're not going to be able to be the best you could be. So you need to get recharged and you need to keep your social calendar. You need to keep friends. Don't cut yourself off from the
Don't
world.
become isolated. That's a big thing with caregiving. Don't let yourself become isolated. It's very easy to do because you just aren't able to get out and connect, but isolation, leads to depression. It's just a slippery slope that, can spiral down, so don't, isolate. And, the whole phenomenon of the web and support groups online, people have really been able to be their caregivers in the home and reach out to these support groups online, and actually is keeping people, less isolated. So, that's one kind of new resource to join online.
And the rituals, too. If you always go out to dinner, used to go out to dinner every Friday night, that's important. That's real important. Ask for a volunteer for that time so you can still do those kinds of things. I think that's something to look forward to and think, oh boy, that's time just for me, a glass of wine and something really nice. Nobody not having to clean up. Those kinds of things I think are real important. I think that helps too if you have every Friday, this is what I'm going to do. That helps. Or every month I'm getting my hair cut. Whatever it is that's important to you that you like to do, if you kind of pencil them in and you have a date with yourself, that really helps because it's kind of like we're conscientious people. I can tell every one of us sitting around here, I have to do this just to keep myself healthy and to keep yourself in good mental balance. Boy, I see so much depression. Now, you're right. We see so much depression, and it's the adult children that struggle the most with this depression. I watch them and I think, oh, it's such a shame. And myself, my mom's 87, and I feel like, oh, I should do more, could do more. You beat yourself up, you're trying so very hard, and it's easy to fall into that exhaustion and resentment. I don't know if any of you ever felt that, but a ton of resentment. It's like, oh, well, this, and where's my brothers? They're just not there. And they're never going to be there. Right? And we all feel that, so that's a natural thing.
Did you have a question?
Yes. My mother was diagnosed with lung cancer 4 years ago, but she went through 2 bouts of chemo, 2 bouts of radiation, and to this day she's still with me. And she is actually in remission and hasn't had treatment for almost 2 years, which the doctors just are amazed because they don't have too many cases that survive lung cancer. And but I'm here because I want to find out about hospice for the day that I am going to need it. And my mother is living with me. She's been with me for 30 years. My son was a baby at the time. also have other children in whom that, you know, have been raised around my mother all these years. And so I just feel this is a wonderful opportunity to learn what is out there that, you know, I can reach out to for the day that I feel that, you know, I'm going to need some help.
Sure. That's right. You just don't want to wait too long. You're going to know when she starts feeling tired and needing more oxygen and not eating as much. Then call somebody in.
She's, you know, very independent. She drives. She's been through so much.
Wow.
I mean, they opened the valve to her sac of her heart because she was, you know, building up fluid. She had a tube that was inserted, but she had a bag for like 6 months. They removed that. And like I said, she hasn't had any treatment, and she's, you know, doing fine.
What a gift.
But, you know, I don't know how long that will go on.
Well, thank you, Willow Tree Hospice. It's wonderful. Thanks for sharing.